Welcome to today's reading to Blood Moon Oracle. And my name is Leticia. I hope you guys are well today. We are going to do our reading from our book, um, Spiritual Hygiene, Ayan Lavanzant. It is a very peculiar Sunday, but I like it. It's a weird Sunday. I was up early, out and about, and it felt like it was going to be a hot day. Then all of a sudden it shifted and it started sprinkling a little bit, and it got a little muggy, but there's just something very comforting about this weather today. I'm liking it. And so I hope you have gotten off to a beautiful Sunday. And I hope you being here listening helps to set the pace for the week. I do really feel like how we start a thing is very instrumental in kind of projecting how we're going to finish it. And so hopefully this helps you to start your week off well. Okay. And so talking about our chapter number 12 on page 238. So if you have your books, maybe you've already read through it. Maybe you've waited to, just listen. Last week we talked a lot about our center, our core, finding it and returning to it if we already know it. But we talked about some things that can separate us, what that looks like, how understanding our center can be very instrumental in living. We also looked at the mental aspects of that, the brain versus the mind versus the consciousness. A lot of good stuff last week. We talked about how we can take a moment to come back to where we need to be to align back with our center if we've gotten off, and everybody has. I don't think there is any benefit if we never have moments of correction or moments that enlighten us and make us more aware. That's what this journey is all about. It's not about walking a perfect life. Nobody's able to do that, not in these bodies. They're imperfect, and so it's about aligning our spiritual life with our physical one, right? That's what understanding our center is all about. It's about realigning. And I just realized something too. I never did post the activity from last week. I'm looking at it right now. My apologies. Please forgive me. I will definitely do that. But along with what we talked about last night was how separating from our center doesn't just happen overnight. It happens in stages. And so we talked about all of that. If you haven't watched the lesson from last week, feel free to go back and watch them. All of these in the playlist are free. Okay. It is meant to help those that are looking to heal and to understand deeper what it means to walk in your sovereignty, what it means to walk in your divine liberty, and what it means to experience clean living and tap into your power, your inner authority. And so if that's you, I hope you stick around and kind of hang out with us and maybe even let me know how this has helped you. It has drastically helped me. Every time I read a chapter and come and sit down and read with you all, my jaw is on the floor, literally. And so it's just all good stuff. It's meat. And, some of it may not apply to you. Some of it may be irrelevant. You learn to eat the meat and throw away the bones, but it's something for everybody in this book. And so we always start with an opening prayer. But before we do, I just like to take a moment to thank you for, if you're someone who continues to show up and listen, thank you for your energy. It's always a pleasure, even if it's just one, to have people to stop by. And sometimes I'll have comments. And it's not always positive. That's okay too. I think being honest is more beneficial than just saying something, acting like you enjoyed it and maybe you really didn't. I think being able to allow whatever comes up, even if it is something that challenges you, that's beneficial. And so whatever the response has been, I appreciate all of it. And so thank you. The fact that you even take your time to stop, I'm appreciative. And so if you have been enjoying this, I invite you to like, share, Comment if you feel comfortable. You could always email me as well. Or if you're just passing by for the first time, welcome. My name is Leticia. Feel free to subscribe if this is right along what you align with. Not everybody aligns with this, and that's okay. It's not for everybody. I'm not for everybody. And so that's okay. If it's not, keep it moving. But we always start with an opening prayer. And so we are going to do that today. And I'm also praying that the sound is good. Since we are at home, we're not outside, so we don't have as many challenges that we have been having, because I do like to be outside. I like to go out to the park and just have a different type of scenery, a different atmosphere. It changes the dynamic of the message many times. And so I enjoyed being outside, but there were some challenges with the wind and people that also love to be outside, all around me. But I liked it. I hope you guys liked those recordings. I like them. But let's go ahead and get started with the prayer. So for the opening prayer meditation, it says, Beloved divine presence, seat of all rhythm, keeper of all truth. If I have given my time to what dims me, if I have spent my energy without intention, if I have tied my soul to unspoken pain, or broken sacred trust with my own spirit, I now ask to be forgiven. I ask you to return me to presence. I ask you to return me to truth. I ask you to return me to my center where my soul speaks clearly. Let every place within me that has been scattered, neglected, or disguised be called home by you. May I not fear the mirror of self-awareness. May I not run from the weight of what I have carried. I ask that this be a time of release, where the fog lifts, where the hooks are unfastened, and the altar of my heart is restored to truth. I declare this now. I am not my habits. I am not the disconnection. I am not the past distortions. I am the living light of the divine, cleansing and clearing the temple of my soul. I am ready to begin again. I love this. Let me say that again. I am ready to begin again. Amen. I say, I'll, and so it is. I love this. All right. So for those of you that have your books, if you have them, we are on page 238. This is chapter 12, and this talks about when the core cracks. Okay. Unforgiveness, misalignment, and the cost of spiritual neglect. Okay. When the core cracks. I don't know why every time I get on camera, my nose starts to tickle. So forgive me if you guys always see me like doing this or wiping my nose. It starts to tickle every time I get on camera for some reason. So that's neither here nor there. The story of Amara. Okay. So Amara was a beautiful soul, radiant, intelligent, giving. As a young girl, she aspired to be a nun, but her mother yearned for grandchildren. As an only child, she felt obligated to follow the traditional track of womanhood and motherhood. At age 37, she had not found the right match for her deeply spiritual life. Amara knew how, and she loved to hold space for others in their times of need. She was frequently called upon to share wisdom in spiritual circles, where she performed rituals with great skill and grace. But quietly, beneath the glow of her candles, incense and affirmations, something had begun to decay. The wounds were so quiet, she forgot they were there until someone spoke her name, until a scent or silence or shadow brought it all back. Amara didn't think she was holding a grudge. She had learned to rise above it, to move on, to rebuild. The betrayal had happened years ago. A trusted friend, and dare she say, lover, had used her, lied to her, and humiliated her behind her back. At first, the rage was visible, but time buried beneath layers of "I'm fine." She prayed, she taught, she smiled, but something wasn't flowing. Since then, she repeatedly found herself overly protective in relationships. She assumed the worst before she hoped for the best. Her heart felt guarded, even when she allowed herself to experience fleeting moments of joy. Love didn't seem to land. Her affirmations felt hollow. Her connection to the divine felt muffled. It was unforgiveness, disguised as strength and service. Amara had not realized that the pain she built a throne in her soul, that the pain she had built a throne in her soul. Her heart was no longer a place of truth. It had become a shrine to the wound. Unforgiveness had become an altar where she unconsciously worshiped with denied thoughts and avoided feelings. Daily, she offered her energy to the memory of the harm rather than to the healing of her heart. She had forgiveness with her lips and on her journal pages. Her heart, however, refused to participate or align. The betrayal of her former friend lingered like a cloud of smoke in her soul. She smiled when they were mentioned. "I'm fine. It's okay." She would say, "I'm over it." But in the quiet moments, her chest would tighten. Her thoughts would spiral. She rehearsed her pain like a prayer, feeding the spirit of her wound instead of the altar of her truth. In the quiet moments when she gave herself permission to feel her truth, she felt ashamed. She took that shame into a mental cave of denial and ordered it to stay there because she did not have the time, would not give herself the time to unpack it. Amara was exhausted. She was given more than she had. She avoided confrontations like the plague. She kept saying yes when she meant no. She wondered why she felt so invisible. To keep the peace, she swallowed her truth. Her spirit, once vibrant, now felt faint. She also found herself gossiping more, disguising it as just processing aloud or sharing her feelings and observations honestly. She overcommitted and underdelivered, breaking quiet promises to herself and then compensating with public performance. She prayed often, but her prayers felt empty. One day, she realized that she could no longer hear the voice of God, which meant her intuition had dimmed. Her body ached for rest, but she kept going. Her soul ached for truth, but it felt overwhelming. Outwardly, she was seen as being deeply spiritual, while inwardly she felt disconnected. What Amara did not realize was that she was not experiencing a personal failure. It was an erosion, a slow, steady disconnection from her spiritual core because she was afraid to feel, afraid to grieve, afraid to rest in truth. What we must remember is that your spiritual core is the inner sanctuary where alignment begins. It is the sacred intersection where your soul leads, your mind surrenders, and your energy flows freely in communion with the divine. When your core is intact, you are clear, grounded, and in rhythm with your truth. However, when poor spiritual hygiene becomes your norm, the erosion begins. Each behavior or survival pattern may seem small on its own, but collectively they create a spiritual smog. The conscious choice, failure, or resistance to clear the smog is the textbook definition of poor spiritual hygiene. She be always touching on the heart of the matter. It's always on point. I can definitely remember times being in this energy, in this space, in this spiral. And if we're not careful, if I'm not careful, I can easily find myself back in that energy too if I don't take the time. One of the very important things that I'm learning right now is how important it is to clear energy, to clear old stuff continuously so that it doesn't become that build up and smog till we can't really see what needs to be done in the moment. But pain is a very powerful drug. I'm going to say that. Pain is a powerful drug. And it can carry us deeper than we want to go and make us stay longer than we want to stay. It's like a cigarette, right? We underestimate the power of nicotine until it has us in a chokehold and we're ready to let it go. But it's like, I'm not ready to let you go though, right? Pain is kind of like that. And I guess just a misconception that we need to be strong. Like we need to always forgive and always be okay with things, depending on the type of theology or philosophy that we're following. But it is okay. It's okay to admit, hey, I'm disappointed, and no, I don't want to move forward, right? When you realize the truth of a situation, like in her situation, how she was, she found out that she had helped someone who actually, used her, backstabbed her, and, that's painful. It's painful, especially being a person that wants to see other people do well. And it comes to the point where you learn, or I have learned, that it's okay to express the disappointment and it's okay to protect yourself. Like you can forgive. That forgiveness does require for you to allow yourself to process it and admit that there was something that happened. It's like, yeah, I'm not aligning with that. I'm not doing that. When somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Don't make them have to show you 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 times and continue to promise and say sorry, but the actions don't change. The intention doesn't change, right? Sometimes people align with us as long as there's something beneficial that they can get. I always like to look at how people treat people that can't do anything for them. That's a great indicator of who that person is. Sometimes we gravitate to people that we feel are useful or can benefit us in some type of way. But how do you treat the janitor, right? How do you treat the waiter at the restaurant? How do you treat that person that's standing outside of the gas station when you go in? And so, but I can definitely get with this. Pain it's a drug. And sometimes it takes years to acknowledge it. For me, one of my greatest challenges where it was after I had my kids, the painful failure of relationship. It took me a long time. And part of that, it didn't really have a lot to do with the people outside of me and the fact that I was experiencing so many disappointments, but it all had to do with me and my situation, being able to forgive myself so that I could move forward. Stop beating yourself up. Like some of the stuff has nothing to do with you. It's the other person or the other people. But we beat ourselves up for some reason. And we hold ourselves back and we keep ourselves captive and we close our hearts in. It's almost punishing ourselves for allowing ourselves to experience that. But sometimes the experience itself is meant to break something open within us. As I say many times, it is within the shadows that we find our greatest gifts. And sometimes the only way to get to the shadow is through pain. It doesn't always have to be, right? But it's allowing yourself to be vulnerable and then act accordingly. Whatever you find when you open up, right? Act accordingly. but don't hold yourself hostage. It took me a while to learn that. But to remember that when we're talking about our spiritual core, it's the inner sanctuary where alignment begins. It is the sacred intersection. That means it crosses over where your soul leads and your mind surrenders and your energy flows freely in communion with the divine. So many things are happening at this intersection. Our soul is leading, our mind is surrendering, and our energy is flowing freely in connection with our source. And when our soul is intact, when a core is intact, that's when we experience clearness or clarity and groundedness. And that's when we find ourselves in rhythm with our truth. We're kind of dancing, right, with reality. However, when we're talking about poor spiritual hygiene, when it becomes the norm, that's when that erosion of this experience of these things, these truths begin. And each behavior or spiritual pattern may seem small on its own. Like, it doesn't have to be big, tumultuous events. It could be very small, little things, inconspicuous things. But when they come together collectively, they create a spiritual smog. The unconscious choice, the failure, the resistance to clear that smog, when you realize it or notice it, is the textbook definition of poor spiritual hygiene. Okay. So the first one is unforgiveness, which is a binding cord. Have you ever heard of cutting cords? We talk about that a lot in spiritual hygiene, cutting cords, severing ties. One of the ways that becomes difficult is through unforgiveness. We refuse to let it go. But let's see what she says about it. The binding cord of unforgiveness. Unforgiveness is not simply withholding pardon. It is anchoring your spirit to a moment that no longer exists. Each revisit to the grievance feeds an altar of pain instead of presence. Unforgiveness rarely announces itself loudly. It shows up in tension behind the smile, in the sudden ache when a name is spoken. Unforgiveness is a spiritual teacher. It not only binds you to the person, but it also binds you to the emotional frequency of the harm. Unforgiveness binds your breath to fear, your joy to suspicion, and your choices to the ghosts of what was never resolved. What you do not forgive, you begin to fear. What you fear, you begin to control. What you control, you cannot surrender. Without surrender, the soul cannot breathe. As a spiritual tether, unforgiveness becomes an invisible cord that keeps your soul linked to the frequency, memory, and emotion of a painful experience. It may not be apparent in your day-to-day actions, but it resonates in your energy field. It informs your boundaries. It influences your expectations. You may think you've moved on, but your soul remains caught in a loop, revisiting what was done, reactivating what was left, rehearsing what was lost. Whether consciously or unconsciously, every time you revisit the wound, replay the story, or suppress the emotion without transmuting it, the tether of unforgiveness strengthens. It becomes harder to live in the present moment because part of your spirit is still worshiping at an altar built in the past. Unforgiveness says, I'm not ready to be free. This is not because you lack the capacity. It is because the tether has become familiar. It may feel like protection, but it is spiritual entrapment, and you are trapped in the energy of unforgiveness. Yeah, listen, let's just be real. Some of the things that we experience in life is difficult, but it's doable. That's why they say unforgiveness is for us. It's not for the other person. It's for us so that we can be free, so that we can continue to move forward and live the life that we've come here to live. Like I was saying, with the betrayal, sometimes we take that on And we take accountability for that. We blame ourselves for the betrayal. We look for reasons as to why that happened. Like, what didn't we do right? Or what could we have done different? What should we have done? We just beat ourselves up when maybe it just wasn't aligned. Maybe that was there for a certain season to teach you that lesson, right? But unforgiveness is a blocker. It's a stopper. It stops you from living your best life, basically. And of course, what we're talking about now, it severs you from the core and keeps you from the core. It's a tether. It's a stronghold, a tie, and it holds you from moving forward. If you can imagine being tethered to something, so like say you're tethered to a tree. One of my favorite stories to tell when I'm trying to get people to understand their power is imagine a horse tied to a chair and is standing there kind of like it can't go anywhere because it sees the rope connected to the chair, not really understanding like the horsepower that you carry is like you can demolish that chair. Matter of fact, you can drag that chair. The chair has to go where you go. You are the one that's in authority in that situation, but because of the perception and whatever that chair represents, when you think of whatever has caused you pain, like we give over our power to that thing, and it begins to cause us to see ourselves as being powerless to it, when in reality, we can smash that chair. The comparison is not even a comparison. The amount of power of a horse compared to a chair, like that's ludicrous. But sometimes that's how the tether works. It serves to keep you from living, keep you from, expressing the liberation that is so yours in this life, the liberation to move forward, to continue to experience life joyfully. And so it also cracks the core. Whatever it is that we say, we do, or we feel, and we believe, when it's out of harmony, the soul becomes divided. Misaligned behaviors are not just habits. They are symptoms of erosion, a quiet separation from your center. They are also the result of poor spiritual hygiene. My tongue is being tied. They are also the result of poor spiritual hygiene that interrupts the flow of divine presence in your daily life. These seemingly ordinary behaviors carry extraordinary spiritual consequences, and your commitment to healing begins by bringing them back into truth. Okay? For instance, telling lies, even small ones. Lying fractures the inner voice, even if no one else hears the falsehood. Like we can lie to ourselves, but your spirit does. Your spirit knows, and it becomes harder to hear the voice of God when you are consistently overriding the voice of truth within. Like when we're in, what do they call it? We refuse to admit the reality of what it is, right? We're just in denial is the word I'm thinking of. When we're in denial, like not only do we block out the truth, we block out all truth, even the connection. It fragments and splinters and fractures those inner voices. Spiritually, when we look at the impact, the energetic static starts to build up in our field. And for those of you that understand energy, it almost feels like friction, just think of static, when sometimes when we carry a heavy level of energy, this is what Spirit has given me, and we get close to another thing with a lot of energy, there's a spark, there's a small current of electricity that happens. And sometimes you get shocked and you're like, what was that? That was the energy reacting to the other object that was charged with possibly the opposite energy, maybe. But it's the same in spirit, we began to get triggered or spark at certain things, that meet that unforgiveness, whatever that is. Like she was saying in the story, whenever a name is brought up, we get triggered, or whenever that So somebody comes and asks us, I know you just got, done having that difficult problem. How's that going? And it triggers you. It's like, well, why are you asking me that? I don't want to talk about that. Like, things that show up that show that you have not healed or you haven't forgiven. The energetic static in the field becomes apparent. Also, loss of inner trust, no longer being able to trust ourselves, like to make good decisions or to have certain experiences. One of my big ones was like, it took me a long time to trust people, like for that reason. But I got to the point where I'm like, you know what? I'm ready to live. Like, and when you start to trust yourself, when you get to the point where you trust yourself, you stop putting so much faith in people. You just come to the conclusion, like, we're all imperfect. We're going to be disappointed. I'm going to disappoint some people, I'm sure. And people are going to continue to disappoint me. We're imperfect. We're human, Now, to trust myself means to understand what's aligned for me and what's not. Maybe that is something or someone that is not really, maybe there's like a disalignment of core values or things that will continue to cause a problem. Like it's knowing the difference between staying there or taking certain accountabilities. Like it's trusting yourself to know when to walk away or if to walk away or whether or not to give grace, right? It's trusting yourself to know how to handle those situations and how to handle yourself and to be graceful with yourself through those situations. That's what it means to trust yourself. Like you trust yourself. You don't have to avoid certain things. You can go in and experience it and kind of evaluate and see if that's something for you. Maybe you don't have to experience it to know that it's not for you. But in times where you may not be sure, it's like, I trust myself to have this experience and see what it might have to offer. What do we have to lose? But the loss of inner trust with ourselves, but also with others too. One of the other things she mentioned here was always seeing the negative to the point where you expect a negative result or negative outcome was what I was going to say. That loss of trust can also happen as we, look at others outside of ourselves as well. Not everybody intends, to harm or to do something, that's not on the up and up. But sometimes unforgiveness can cause us to see everybody in that same way and in that same negative light of unforgiveness. And to kind of not even just see people in that way, but even to expect that from people. Like I was saying, pain can do a number on you and it takes time to heal. It takes intention to allow yourself to process that energy, to digest it, to analyze it, to deal with it, and to make peace with it so that you can move on. Because not everybody means us harm. Yeah, there are some people that will, have very negative intentions for us when we provide space for that. And there may be lessons in that, but not everybody is set out to do harm, right? That's the whole moral of the story. It's not looking at everybody, classifying everything in this negative light because of unforgiveness. Okay. And then the last one was diminished ability to channel or discern divine guidance. Ooh, this is a big one. A blocked crown chakra. Yeah. For that reason, that's why it's so important to process it. It's not enough to avoid it or to ignore it. Each of us have a responsibility to process our pain and to allow ourselves to grieve it, to release it, and when available, transmute that energy into something good. Okay? You don't have to hold on to it and throw it away. Sometimes you can use that. One of my greatest motivators, let me tell you, has been pain. I'm gonna just be real. Nothing motivates you like pain. It's like, okay, you find yourself down and out. What you gonna do? You gonna stay there, or you gonna get up and use that as stepping stones to build yourself up, to step up higher? And so unforgiveness can also create blocks with our connection, okay? So that we can't even receive divine guidance. That's crazy. Unforgiveness. And then it says gossiping and breaking confidences. This is a huge one for me. Okay. It's huge. Gossip may be culturally normalized, but spiritually, it is a subtle poison. It leaks sacred energy, breaking confidences, fractures the energetic web of trust, and each fracture weakens the field of your own integrity. Yeah. And so I think we all can really get down with this one because we live in a culture where gossip is just not only is it normalized, gossip is worshipped. Look at all these tabloids and social media. I get so irritated when I see people take a person, like a famous person, and like totally dissect their lives and make a whole, dialogue out of it. And it's like, that is so there's nothing more disrespectful than that. At the same time, I always admire people who are in the spotlight or famous and you never see them. You hear very minimal, that says a lot about their spiritual hygiene, like their boundaries. They have very good boundaries in place, obviously. But gossip is very much mainstream and it becomes difficult to abstain from it because it is. And we look at some of the sitcoms too, and I'm a culprit. I have my favorite. I love Tyler Perry, very real. I think he taps into what needs to be healed with, the culture. I'm not just going to say a certain people, what needs to be healed with the culture. And he does a really good job of doing that. But in order to stimulate the appetites of the people, many times you'll see that his plots are very gossip driven. It's stuff that cause us to want to know. And that's what gossip does. It perks our ears up and it causes us to be interested in things that really have nothing to do with us. Like, how is that going to benefit you? How is that going to improve your life? Right. So I'm guilty too, because some of the sitcoms I love to watch. But as far as you allowing it to leave your mouth, you being a vessel for gossip, that's what we're talking about here. And it weakens the field of our own integrity. And sometimes I do too. I allow things to slip out of my mouth that shouldn't, and immediately I'm convicted spiritually, energetically, and I have to go back and retract the statement and say, well, I shouldn't have said that. What I should say is, or maybe I shouldn't say anything at all, right? Because we are so trained and brainwashed to do these things many times. And sometimes it's because of the environment that we're in too. And so to be conscious of these things is good spiritual hygiene. And though we slip up, right? Because it's not about being perfect again, but it's about understanding how to navigate and release ourselves from these things that will separate us from our core. This is one of them, and it's a big one. Gossip and breaking confidences. When someone comes to us and tells us something, do we run quick and in a hurry to go and spread it and tell somebody else? Breaking confidences. Like, I think we need more people that stand in the gap for others. And what that means is when you see someone needs help or they come to you and they share something with you, you have an obligation, like a sacred duty, to cover that person. If that person has entrusted something to you, you have a responsibility to cover that person. You may or may not be able to help that person, but absolutely don't harm them, right? Don't run and create a narrative and spread this wildfire of information, right? But we do it, right? People do it. And I feel like this hits home for each of us and just lets us know ways that we can maintain a spiritual integrity, okay? To be aware of these things, stay away from gossip, and be a safe place for people, okay? Somebody comes to confide in you. If they share something with you in private, make sure that you keep that in private. Like, that should never come back around a different way, what you were told in private, especially if you were the only one that it was shared with. Those are things that cause a breakdown, not only in relationships, but in our own integrity, because you're held accountable for that spiritually. And so gossip and breaking confidences, huge. Remember, we're talking about very small things, but when it is collectively added up, it has a huge impact. We're talking about being connected to our core. So when we talk about the gossip and the mistrust, this causes a misalignment between sacred speech and sacred presence. Our words are supposed to be sacred. Like, words are powerful. They create life and death. Okay. Our presence is supposed to be powerful as well. It can also invite in life or death. And so what she's saying is that a lot of how we carry ourselves as it pertains to gossip, like there's something really deep that we need to understand when it comes to our tongue and how we move and how that affects and connects us to other things that happen or other things that's possibly unfolding within our lives, or even pointing to the fact that these types of things can render us not only powerless, but even lifeless too. I would beg to say even lifeless. Impotent is the word I want to use. Can render us impotent. That's deep. The second thing is distorted energetic signature. Distorted energetic signature. That's that static in the energy field. We no longer feel or look like ourselves. We no longer show up as our authentic selves. We become distorted in our being. And then exhaustion from masking and managing inauthenticity. And for those of you that have experienced that, it's a lot of work to keep that up, to keep up a narrative that you started, that you know is not true, or that you know you have spread, and you're trying to contain it. Like, there's a lot. It's like telling one little white lie that you have to keep telling more lies to cover, and more lie, and it gets bigger and bigger and more distort, right? It actually is a huge thing, and it's exhausting, right? It's exhausting when it comes to managing it. The next section says broken commitments and inner betrayals. When you say yes and don't follow through, when you make promises you didn't intend to keep, whether to yourself or to others, your energy splinters. Others may feel disappointed, but your own field suffers most. Trust, once cracked, becomes difficult to restore. I definitely agree. The spiritual impact is the voice of intuition weakens. The inner authority collapses, and relationships and spiritual clarity becomes clouded. But again, that goes back to really standing in your truth too, because you should feel okay to say no when it doesn't align, or to say I pass, not say yes when you really mean no, or not be able to stand within your boundaries. This kind of coincides with that people-pleasing energy. Broken commitments are as a result of you trying to extend yourself more than you are able to handle, right? It's overextending yourself, or allowing yourself to be pushed past your own limitations and boundaries. And in doing that, you betray yourself. Because not only does everybody else end up upset because you weren't able to meet what you said you would do, you feel bad about it within yourself too. Right? And you betray yourself because you know that you could have just said no. Like, why didn't I just say no? Why do I feel the need to say yes? All right, just say no. Or just know when enough is enough. Know when it is time to do something different, or to walk away, or, this is all about trusting ourselves and not betraying ourselves because we don't trust ourselves. Misalignment of spiritual resources. Oof, this is a big one too. There's a sacred architecture woven into the life of the soul, where your soul leads, your mind surrenders, and your energy flows in alignment with the divine. This is the place of holy rhythm, sacred order, and inner clarity. When time is overspent, money is misused, or energy is scattered, this spiritual alignment begins to unravel. What once felt rooted becomes restless. What once moved with grace now grinds with resistance. The spiritual core, the center of your being, begins to dissolve beneath the surface of your daily doing. Mismanagement of spiritual resources is the unconscious misuse, avoidance, or distortion of time, money, and energy in ways that disrupt your spiritual rhythm or your sacred rhythm, violate your inner agreements, and accumulate as spiritual interference or smog. Responsibility. As resources, time, energy, and money are not just practical elements for living, they are also spiritual currencies. Wow. Wow. They are the divine triad of stewardship. Time is how you mark what matters. Money is how you engage with divine circulation. Energy is how you carry the vibration of your soul. These four things are the carriers of your values, your priorities, and your agreements with the divine. When these currencies are mishandled through overcommitments, financial dishonesty, or energetic leakage, the channel of your soul becomes congested. To misuse, hoard, manipulate, or promise these without fulfillment is to mishandle a divine trust. Whether it's your own income, borrowed support, a service you'd agreed to pay for, or a tithe dishonored, these misalignments create spiritual weight. And let me say this too, because this is tapping in for me. This goes along with our inner truths, right? Because for one, tithes may not resonate with everybody, but taking a look at what you've agreed to do, I think is huge here, or what your obligations, your responsibilities are. And then taking a look at how you are aligning with it. Again, still talking about the same things, inner truth plus outer alignment, right? And this is something that hits home for me. I've always just had a very interesting relationship when it comes to time management. Even today, when it comes to like schedules and strategy and being structured, right? I'm challenged in that way, and I recognize that. But to be honest about it and to continuously work on that. And then we take a look at too, that's going to look different for everybody, because everybody has been given a different situation. And so really it boils down to you understanding where you are, being honest and knowing your truth, right? What you feel called to align with and aligning with that, right? Or working to align with that. Because the time, the money, the energy, like all of that is valuable, right? All of it is, it's spiritual currency. And what we are being given, like I was talking about earlier in the chapters, we were talking about talents, right? Or we can say gifts, or whatever it is that we've been given to utilize in this lifetime, not to hoard it. We were talking about the story about the talents that were given. If you've been following along, you know what I'm talking about. I talked about this earlier in the book, where there were several people that were given a certain amount of talent. Some people ran and hid them because they only had one. It's like, I'm going to reserve this so I don't lose it. One of them had 3. They buried 1 and spent 2 or something like that. And then one had 5. They went and used all of theirs. And then they came back to the master. The master asked them what they did with their talents, and was disappointed in the one that hid it, and the other one that hid one of them but spent the other 2, but very pleased with the one that had 5 and went out and used all 5. And because there was such pleasure with that decision, that person was given more. And so it's understanding and being responsible with what we have, right? And again, aligning with your truth. What is that? What have you been called to do? with what you have. Again, that also taps into you being connected and finding out what your purpose is. Like, what is the guidance around what it is that you're doing in your life, what you've been given. For some, that's very specific. For some, it's like just being responsible with what I have, being grateful, not taking it for granted. I know people that don't have a lot, but is very resourceful and very generous, very grateful, thankful, right? Not everybody wants to have a whole bunch of stuff, right? Simplicity is life. I feel like the more you have, the more pressure and the more problems, and so, but I also feel like there's a purpose behind the situations that we've been placed in. So it's all about being true to that. First of all, finding out what that is. Okay. And so, yeah. The misuse of time. So we're going to go and delve into each one specifically. When the sacred becomes secondary. Time is not just something you spend, it is something you sanctify. What you consistently give your time to, you anoint, whether it reflects your truth or not. When you overcommit, procrastinate, or fill your schedule with what does not serve your soul, you are not just disorganized, you are displacing the divine. Time misused becomes time misaligned. Misaligned time becomes spiritual smog. Wow. You thought of time like that? I always thought of time as like a man-made conception as it pertains to like clocks and all of that, trying to control. But when we think of time, we're talking about what we do, right? What we use our energy on, how we move through our days, right? That's what we're talking about. Not necessarily time itself. We're just talking about our use of this time, this life that we're living in this space right now. There's some signs of misused time: constant busyness with little fulfillment, avoidance of sacred stillness, resistance to rest, reflection, or saying no, and feeling behind, overwhelmed, or reactive. It's interesting that this would come up because yesterday was my day off and I had a bit of a very empty day. I did work a couple of hours overtime, but the rest of my day was empty. And I struggled with the stillness or the lack of movement. And lately I've been really, really, really tired, needing additional sleep. And that was something that Spirit was talking to me about. And Spirit was asking me, why are you fighting rest? Like, why do you feel like you need to go when I am providing you time to be still and to rest? Right? Your body has been saying all this week that you need the extra rest. So just sit down, be still, rest. And so I did. I just, I took like several naps yesterday, and I just allowed my body to just do what it did as I sat down and rested and got still. And so it was very beautiful. But that too is a good use of time. Okay. Whatever you're being called to do in the moment is a good use of your time. So this is a good time to take a sacred pause and take a breath, right? Take a breath and get still. Place the hand over the heart. And then we're going to ask ourselves gently, where am I giving my time? Where am I giving my time to things that do not reflect what I say I value? Okay. All right, think of that for a second. And then the next point is overcommitment. When you say yes in fear of guilt, instead of discernment, you violate your sacred rhythm. Overcommitment is not generosity. It is the soul's quiet cry for boundaries. And the spiritual impact is erosion of self-trust or emotional depletion marked as productivity or emotional congestion. or you lose the ability to be still in your own soul, or sacred guidance becomes difficult to access, or divine timing is drowned in urgency and distraction. Then we look at time as avoidance. Sometimes we fill our time with noise to avoid what the silence would reveal. Busyness becomes a drug that numbs our spiritual core. Time as avoidance is a subtle form of soul abandonment. You fill your day to escape your depth. You check tasks instead of checking in with yourself. You surround yourself with motion to avoid the mirror of stillness. And by doing so, you leak energy in quiet, barely noticeable ways. And this results in emotional truths being ignored or denied. The soul wisdom is drowned out by tasks, and the presence is lost in performance. And then we have sacred amnesia. This is the forgetting of your origin, your authority, and your divine rhythm. It is what happens when your life becomes shaped by survival, repetition, or outside demands, until the memory of who you truly are begins to dim beneath who you've been told to be. When your energy is consistently spent on the wrong things, the wrong people, the wrong stories, worries, and performances, you slowly forget your essence, resulting in you becoming spiritually disoriented, or the connection to your divine assignment weakens, or you begin to live reactively instead of intentionally. That was the misuse of time, okay? Now we're going to look at the misuse of energy. When you leak instead of lead. So energy is your essence in motion. It is the vibration of your soul made visible in your choices, boundaries, and presence. When you give your energy to resentment, performance, gossip, or emotional suppression, you are not just exhausted, you are leaking life force. Where there is leakage, there is erosion. When your field is not protected by clarity, your energy is spent managing distortion instead of magnifying your light. And this leads to feeling drained after certain conversations or environments. That's a huge one. Ooh. Overgiving or over caretaking to avoid rejection, holding emotional tension or unspoken truths, and constant on mode without restoration, going, and never pouring back into yourself. Again, we're going to take a break right here. A sacred pause. Deep breath in and release it slowly. Get still. Placing our hand over our heart and asking ourselves gently, where is my energy being drained? And what boundary or truth needs to be honored in its place? There's a dissonance between intuition and action, intention and action. When what you value and how you spend your time are not in harmony, an energetic dissonance develops. The spiritual core, which requires congruence, begins to dim under the weight of contradiction, resulting in inner confusion, replacing clarity, guilt or resentment silently accumulating, or the feeling of spiritually off center but can't name why. This is the erosion taking place. Another thing is disregard for rest. To ignore your body's need for restoration is to reject the divine rhythm. Hustle culture, spiritual striving, and burnout are often normalized forms of sacred disconnection, resulting in disconnection from the feminine principle of receptivity, reduced ability to hear divine guidance, or burnout interpreted as spiritual failure. This is the erosion. for the disregard for rest. That's why rest is so important. Next, we have dulling of intuition, which is the spiritual score, the spiritual core. The spiritual core speaks in the language of stillness, rhythm, and resonance. When your energy is constantly being spent without replenishment, your intuitive senses become muffled, resulting in you second guessing your inner voice. Divine downloads are missed, and you lean on logic rather than trust, right? That's their erosion. The last is the one that is ringing the loudest here, the misuse of money. When exchange is out of integrity. Money is a sacred currency. It carries the vibration of trust, value, and divine circulation. When money is misused through avoidance, dishonored commitments, hoarding from fear, or spending without alignment, it creates karmic disruption. The flow of abundance becomes entangled in guilt, shame, and fear of lack. To promise and not pay, to tithe in word but not in action, to manipulate or withhold in exchange. These are not just practical lapses, they are energetic debts. And the signs of money misuse is financial avoidance or chaos, guilt around receiving or charging for your gifts, broken financial agreements, constant fear of not having or being supported. Ooh, I never even really looked at it that way. That's really interesting. When we look at the misuse of money. Okay. We're going to take a break right here and pause. Take a breath in. Release. Just let it sink in. Don't fight it. Just receive it. Get still. Place your hand over your heart and ask yourself, where am I mishandling the energy of provision? And what truth must be honored to restore trust? Financial dishonesty. This is not just about unpaid bills or broken agreements. It is a fracture in the spiritual covenant of reciprocity. When you make a financial promise to yourself or someone else and do not honor it, it creates a distortion in your energetic field. That distortion clouds your relationship with provision, trust, and divine flow, causing blocks to the flow of abundance by signaling unreliability. Seeds doubt in the soil of your integrity, erodes trust between you and others and between you and God, contributes to shame and avoidance in your relationship with money. When it comes to stealing, right, materially or energetically, whether it is time, credit, attention, or creative expression, stealing begins with a belief in not having enough. It's about the intention of why we do what we do, which reflects scarcity thinking and lack consciousness. Both demonstrate spiritual forgetfulness of sufficiency. It tells the universe, I must take what I do not believe will be given. And this has a spiritual impact. A repetitive experiences of scarcity, right? When we approach it from that way and we steal or take something that's not ours because we don't feel like it will be provided, like it puts us in a cycle of scarcity. It diminishes the flow of provision and creativity. And it creates a loss of gratitude and sacred reciprocity. That's big. That's deep. Wow. And it's not so much saying that you have to do this and you have to do that. Again, going back to the core of your truth when it comes to money and what you have ascribed to do. She keeps mentioning tithes, which is interesting. Not everybody will relate to that. Some people may even ask, what is a tithe? I don't know what that is, but that's according to your relationship with your divine creator, right? But whatever that is for you, like, how are you faring with that? Are you abiding by your agreements that you've made spiritually? Um, yeah, this is deep. This one touched me. But we're going to do another sacred pause after that. Through this sacred pause, there is a encouragement that says, my time is not mine alone. It is my offering to my life. My energy is not infinite, but it is sacred. I am the steward of its flow. When I spend my time on things that dim me, I agree to disconnection. When I honor my energy, I honor the divine spark within me. All right. And then she ends this chapter going back to Amara, right? We started this story with Amara's experience, how Amara mended the erosion and reclaimed her core, okay? In the beginning, we found that Amara was disconnected through a betrayal, right? She allowed the pain of that suffering, of that experience to disconnect her. Or maybe it was an experience she needed to have. She found herself in that position. Amara's healing did not arrive in a single moment. It came in fragments, soft, subtle awakenings that arrived as invitations rather than instructions. She began with silence, not the kind born from suppression, but the kind that listens. One morning, while journaling in frustration, she heard her inner voice whisper, not from her mind, but from the soul beneath the pain. It said, you are not angry because you are betrayed. You are angry because you abandoned your own truth. That truth broke something open. Amara stopped trying to be strong. She stopped performing forgiveness. She sat with her grief like a guest she had long ignored. She wrote letters she did not send. The letters were for her release. She let her breath move through the spaces that had been tight for years. She cried, not the shallow tears of surface pain, but the ancient ones, the kind that unclogged memories from her bone marrow. She began to tell the truth, first to herself. I wasn't okay. I didn't say what I needed. I've been wearing a mask in God's name. She forgave herself and everyone else, not all at once, but one hurt, pain, or memory at a time. Each time she named a hurt, she surrendered blame. Each time she honored her boundaries, she celebrated herself. Each time she said no, she offered no explanation. Each time she kept a promise to herself, a piece of her core returned. Her rituals changed. They were no longer acts of spiritual performance. They became holy appointments with her own truth. She created a daily space to feel. She no longer rushed to be okay. She allowed a sacred pause between each lesson and learning. Each day, with reverence, she asked, what needs cleansing in me today? When she became aware of the need and the answer, she addressed it. Amara learned to live in spiritual hygiene as a state of presence. Her truth became her altar, and that is how the erosion reversed. Healing doesn't begin with power. It begins with presence. When you stop hiding your pain behind the facade of performance, your soul can find you again. The divine never left you. You left the place where the divine could meet you. and you can return at any time, right? We read that in the last chapter. That concludes our chapter. And so that was good. I like that. I learned some things out of this chapter. This one touched home for me, as they all do. This one in a different way gives me some things to think about. My resources, time, energy, and money. Do we think of time as a resource? Do you think of your energy as a resource? We know money is, but time and energy too? Okay. Maybe that will change the way that we walk through our day. Let me see it that way. And as we handle it as well, how we handle it. Yeah. Interesting. I just had the hugest aha moment. Yeah, I love this. But that is our lesson for the day. Thank you so much. If you have showed up again to watch yet another chapter reading, feel free to go pick yours up. We have maybe we're on chapter 12, 13, maybe 5 or 6 more chapters. So a few more Sundays and we'll be done with this book. I don't know where Spirit will take me after this, but I know the answer will come when it's time. Spiritual Hygiene is the name of the book by Iyanla Vanzant, minister, priestess, prophetess, inspirator, inspirational speaker, if I could say that, like coach, life coach. She has so many titles, so many hats, and healer, so many ways that she shows up for us. And so appreciate her for her life work and putting her own life on the altar to help us, right? That's what this is about. Okay. So shout out to Miss Iyanla Vanzant. I hope I don't have a sitting where I don't mention her name and call out her name, because this is all about someone who has been obedient to the move of Spirit and has provided what is needed in this time, in this day, in this hour, even at her own, expense. She's placed her own life on the altar. And it's not all peaches and cream. As you know, in the beginning, like, she has some very real, authentic, raw experiences that she's been open and sharing with us. And so I love it. I feel like this is what we're called to do. She is an example. And so sending good energy her way, energy around abundance and success and health, peace, whatever it is that she needs. And so that's the reading for the day. Again, this channel is Blood Moon Oracle. My name is Leticia. So I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your day. Let me know how this resonates. I still need to go back and redo, or not redo, but do the actual resource from last week. So I'll go ahead and do that today. I think I may come with a reading for next week a little bit later as well. But that's it for the day. Thank you all for stopping by, and we will see you all next time. Okay. My name is Leticia. Blood Moon Oracle is the channel, and